والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وأفوض أمري إلى الله وأستكمل تقوى الله وطاعته إن الله بصير بالعباد رب قد آتيتني من الملك وعلمتني من تأويل الأحاديث ربي زدني علما وفهما والحقني بالصالحين وسلام على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Dear my brothers and sisters, inshallah, today we'll be talking about a very important subject mentioned in the Quran and lots of lessons for us as human beings. Feel free to come forward if you want. And so I'm a professor, I'm also a teacher, so I enjoy the lecture when it is more interactive. So I may ask you questions, you may ask me questions. So from time to time, and I'll respect your time. I'll try to finish by the time of Isha, but I cannot promise because most of the time when I start and questions answer, it goes about up to 2 hours. Please be prepared. So Alhamdulillah, I'm a professor, associate professor of instruction at the UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio. And I'm also the project director of the Honey Pathway, which is under the USDA, Department of Agriculture, Next Gen program. So, and I'm working about medicinal honey for about 12 years after I finished during my postdoc at Nebraska Medical Center. So I received my PhD in cellular and molecular biology from University of Nevada, Reno. And then I got my postdoc in cell signaling and bioinformatics and cardiovascular gene therapy at Creighton Medical Center and Nebraska Medical Center. And then I was an assistant professor and department chair for molecular biology and genetics in Turkey, Samsun, and I was also director of Honey Research Center in Turkey. So then I was a visiting professor at Michigan, Alma College, and I became a high school teacher at School of Science and Technology for 3.5 years. I taught biomedical science to the middle and high school students. So Alhamdulillah, I joined the UTSA in 2022, and since then I'm teaching biosciences and medicinal properties of honey as a research class. So which means that students are learning how to do research in this class. So, and I'm coordinating this class. So most of my students are pre-medical and pre-dental and other health professional students. So they are learning about the value of honey as a medicine, which is out there for thousands of years and highly revered in the Quran. So I'd like to read the disclaimer first, because I'm a PhD, I'm not an MD, I'm not a medical doctor. For this reason, the content of this presentation is not to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding medical condition. Although I will not give you a medical advice, I will share you a lot of anecdotes and a lot of clinical trials, successful trials, and as well as animal studies. So you may decide by yourself how to use the honey and how much you need to use the honey. And also I'd like to remind that there are some graphic images in these slides, like big, large wounds that has been healed by honey. If you're uncomfortable with that, so you may want to look some other side. So before again, in my first slide, I'd like to say Happy Bee Day, which is May 20th. So it was about 4 days ago. In the whole world, we celebrated the Bee Day. So why the bee is very important for the whole world? Some of you were in the khutbah today in the Jummah, that honeybee is the most important organism in the world for human life. So if the honeybees if the honeybees like lost in this world or they go extinct, the human life will also be very limited. So that's why, it's very important. I'm going to talk about it, especially about the pollination. So Happy Bee Day. And again, most of my slides, my initial slides will be based on these 2 ayah as I went through in the khutbah today. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّخْلِ أَنِ اتَّخِذِي مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا وَمِنَ الشَّجَرِ وَمِمَّا يَعْرِشُونَ ثُمَّ كُلِي مِنْ كُلِّ الثَّمَرَاتِ فَاسْلُكِي سُبُلَ رَبِّكَ ذُلُلًا يَخْرُجُ مِنْ بُطُونِهَا شَرَابٌ مُخْتَلِفٌ أَلْوَانُهُ فِيهِ شِفَاءٌ لِلنَّاسِ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And your Lord inspired the bees, make your homes in the mountains, the trees, and what the people construct are human inhabitations. And feed from the flower of any fruit you please, and follow the ways your Lord has made easy for you. in the second ayah, which is Surah An-Nahl 69. From their bellies comes forth liquid of varying colors, which is the honey, in which there is healing for humankind. Surely there is a sign for those who reflect. So this last phrase, this is a sign for those who reflect. It is a clear sign for any Muslim, man or woman, regardless of their profession, medical doctor, scientist, engineer, teacher, businessman, economist, computer scientist. There is a sign in these two ayats for every profession, almost every profession on earth. From the perspective that you look, honeybees are great examples. So there are so many hidden treasures in the life of the honeybees, in their communities, in the way of their life, how economic they are, how their engineering is highly developed. We're still trying to understand them. Even if you're a music teacher, you will still find some notes in the honey's buzzes. Or if you are a medical doctor, you will see that how the honeys can protect themselves from different diseases, and as well as how they treat themselves. And also, if you're a pharmacist, you will see that how the honeybees go and collect the minuscule products from the plants, as like phenolics and flavonoids and other chemicals, as they go and gather the nectar. So the honeybees are like chemists. So they put small amounts of chemical into the honeys when they collect them. So again, as a human being, regardless of our profession, there is a sign in these two verses who may reflect. And I know some professors who devoted their lives, and inshallah, I also finally devote my life to this one as well, so to understand and expand and ponder upon and contemplate and research about these two ayats. And again, we can talk about these two ayats and under the projection of these two ayat for hours and hours, and we still may not finish it. So, why the bees are very important in our life? Look at these two images, and what do you see? What is the difference in this GIF image, like produced with bees, produced without bees? Please raise your hand and help me. Brother Mustafa, what do you see here? About 80%, 75 to 80% of our food is gone if we don't have the bees or the other pollinating insects. So 80% of the food that we consume are pollinated by the honeybees and other insects. So that's why the reduction of the number of the bees or bee colonies, it poses a significant threat for the pollination. For example, if you don't have the bees, you may not eat the almonds, or you cannot drink your coffee. You cannot eat the citrus plants, the oranges. You cannot eat the apple or blueberries, or you cannot even some of the milks that you drink other than the milk. So we may not consume most of the foods that we enjoy today. Okay, so let's talk about honey. So honey has been used as a natural therapeutic agent more than a food. So how does this happen? I'm sorry, I'm going to stand up from time to time. So I hope this will be fine with the camera people. So how many of you think honey is just sugar? Please raise your hand if you think honey is just sugar. I should have asked it before showing this image. So honey is 76% sugar. That's true. It is the fructose, glucose, and sucrose, maltose, tronose, and some other sugars. But in addition to this one, honey has lots of minerals. There are live enzymes inside the honey. And for this reason, you should not put your honey into very hot drinks. Don't put your honey into hot coffee. Don't put your honey into hot tea. Don't put your honey into hot water. Put them into warm water, warm coffee, warm tea. The reason for this one is because there are live enzymes inside the honey. And those enzymes get denatured if you put them in the hot water. More than this, remember I told honeybees are collecting those small, minuscule chemicals or organic compounds inside the plants. So those are also sensitive for heat. And they're also about 0.5% of the honey's content is made of these products. So these are just there are more than 200 different compounds inside the honey. There are more than 200 molecules identified inside the honey. So what about these? Like they are vitamins, minerals, enzymes, pigments, phenolic acid, flavonoids, tannins, and as well as, the monosaccharide, disaccharide sugars, amino acids, proteins. So there is a very rich variety of different molecules in it. So why this is important? Why do you think all these things are important for us? Do we really need them? Why don't we, why not the bees, or Allah inspired the bees? Why don't they simply convert the sugar into glucose and fructose and provide us? Or why we cannot replicate the honey? Do you know you can replicate all these products? Like when we have lots of adulterated honey or fraud honeys, but none of these can replicate all these 200 compounds. It will be very expensive. But honeybees just do this for us and provide to us. So why do you think it is important, or what is the significance of these different compounds inside the honey? Do we have any chemists, medical doctors, biochemists? I think we should. So all these compounds, all these molecules, they have their own properties that will be helpful for the honeybee's health, because honeybees, they also need to keep themselves healthy, but it's also helpful for us to keep ourselves healthy. So we're gonna go through these. Some of these components are very critical for us, as antimicrobials, antioxidants, anti-inflammatories, even anti-cancer agents inside the honey, that these molecules are coming from different floral components, from different flowers. And again, another thing is that, what is the color of the honey? I cannot hear. Can you be a little bit loud? Yes. Many different colors, as it's obvious on the right side. So we have honeys from water white, it is the lightest color, water white to dark amber. There is no golden yellow color of the honey. It is not identified like that. Scientifically, it is water white, water white, extra white, white, light amber, amber, and dark amber. So there are 7 shades of honey under the USDA, and then the darkest one is dark amber, which is sometimes like black color. I don't know if you have seen any almost black honeys, but I will show you some examples. And the darker the color of honey, the more molecules inside it. Because most of the time, the phytochemicals, like these are the chemicals coming from plants, they make it a little bit more darker. And the spring honeys, like the one that is extracted in June or late May, these are the ones that are lighter color because of the blossoms. But the ones in the fall, which is extracted in September, those are mostly darker colors because of the dearth in the summer. Because during the summer, we have less water, there's more drought, and then there's not so much of blossoms. So the plants, they produce some chemicals that protect themselves, like the tannins and phenolics and flavonoids. And then when the bees collect them, they also put them into the honey. So that's why fall honey is darker than the spring honey. And based on some scientific evidence, the darker the color of honey, the higher the bioactivity potential, the higher the medicinal potential. So that's why when people ask me which honey should I consume, if it is for medical purpose, you should consume fall harvest, dark honey, and preferably in the comb. Because when the honey is made, I will show you another video very soon. So when the honey is made, honeybees seal the comb, and then that honey is sterile. And this honey can survive for how long? Any ideas? What is the oldest honey? That's why you need to come closer. Yes. 3,000 years, yes. The oldest honey that was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, like King Tut, in one of the pharaohs, and then the honey that was next to his tomb was 3,000 years old. And would you eat that? Yes, it is still edible. So in Turkish we say, the nabıl doesn't go astray and the honey doesn't spoil. So asil azmaz, bal kokmaz. So which means that there is no shelf life for the honey. Yes, when you buy the honey from grocery store, you will see that there is a expiration date. But normally, the honey doesn't expire. And we will cover them why. Because of some antimicrobial properties, honey does not spoil. Okay, so what about the honey production? Like bees live about 6 weeks. How much honey do they produce in those 6 weeks of their life? If you were in the khutbah, you should have remembered this. 1/12 of a teaspoon, right? So a single bee will produce only 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in their whole 6 weeks of life, like 4 days of life. And this means that to make 1 pound of honey, they need to visit 2 million flowers. 2 million flowers, subhanAllah. To get one, when you buy honey from the grocery store, like 1 pound of honey, you are eating the product, you are eating the extract of 2 million flowers. That's what the bees are visiting. And then they fly about 50,000 miles to collect all these things. We should be thankful. Next time when you eat honey, please think about this. When you eat 1 tablespoon of honey or teaspoon of honey, think about how many, this is the extract of how many flowers and how many work of the, how many bees they work for them for their whole life. So alhamdulillah, the bees make the honey. So how many of you think honey is, do you think that honey is stealing the food of the honeybees? Because honeybees make the honey for themselves, right? How can we collect the honey? I mean, why do we collect the honey from them then? What's the problem? Is it ethical? They make more. So honeybees are hoarders, which means that they make more honey more than they need. So if you put them extra boxes, if you put them extra frames, they will keep filling it because they feel that they will need it. So this is how the beekeeping is done. So you leave about like half of the honey for the bees, and the other half of the honey, it is ours. Because again, Allah has inspired them to make the honey for human health. So to make the honey for human consumption. So half of the honey from the comb comes for our consumption, other half they need to remain. But unfortunately, the commercial beekeepers or some greedy beekeepers, they get 90% of the honey and leave them 10% and then feed them with sugar, which is unethical, in my opinion. Okay, so how do the honeybees make the honey? What does this image tell you? Yes. Yes. Okay, now once you watch this, I don't know if you're going to eat honey again. Okay. Oops.
He pollinates 3/4 of the fruits, veggies, and nuts that we eat. We'd be in trouble without him. Of course, there's a reason we don't call them zucchini bees, almond bees, or apple bees. They also give us honey. One healthy hive will make and consume more than 50 kilograms of honey in a single year. And that takes a lot of work. Honey is made from nectar, but it doesn't come out of flowers as that golden sticky stuff. But after finding a suitable food source, bees dive in head first using their long, specially adapted tongues to slurp up tiny sips of nectar into one of 2 stomachs. A single bee might have to drink from more than 1,000 flowers to fill its honey stomach, which can weigh as much as the bee itself when full of nectar. Now, on the way back to the hive, digestive enzymes are already working to turn that nectar into sweet gold. When she returns to the hive, the forager bee will vomit the nectar into the mouth of another worker, and that bee will vomit it into another bee's mouth, and so on. This game of regurgitation telephone is an important part of the honey-making process, since each bee adds more digestive enzymes to turn long chains of complex sugars in the raw nectar into simple monosaccharides like fructose and gluten.
So are you gonna eat honey again? It is the vomit of the bees. Alhamdulillah. But remember, it showed at the beginning there are 2 stomachs in the bees. One of them is called crop, the other one is the actual stomach, which is digestive one. So the crop is the one that's only for storage. So this one never mixes with the digestive one. So that's why it is sterile, it is clean. And although it goes through 200 honeybees, vomiting each other. So
The nectar is still pretty watery, so the bees beat their wings and create an air current inside the hive to evaporate and thicken the nectar, finally capping the cell with beeswax so the enzyme-rich bee barf can complete its transformation into honey.
So this is how once the honey is made, so it is sealed by the beeswax. So after it is sealed, this is sterile, there are no fungus in it, there are no bacteria in it, there are no virus in it. So those are all incompatible, they are all like inactive. So there are some spores, there might be some spores in it, that's the only possibility. But this honey is now completely sterile and it will stay for hundreds or even thousands of years without getting spoiled. So that's why we should consume comb honey, because nobody has touched it after the bees. So if you can access the comb honey, that will be the best method. Okay, so.
Water content and acidic pH, honey isn't a very inviting place for bacteria or yeast spoilage.
Okay, we're gonna talk about this so very soon. Hold on. Oops. Is that visible there or there? Okay. So then this is about how the honey is made. But there is not only one type of honey. There are two major types of honey. One of them is called floral honey. So floral honey is, or blossom honey, this is the one that we know most of the time. It is coming from the flower. But what about, is there any other way that the bees are collecting this sucrose, the table sugar? So what is the other way? It's called honeydew honey. Have you heard about honeydew honey before? I hope you're not gonna regret hearing how it is made, but this is another not very pleasant way of making the honey. So honeydew honey is coming either from the plants, like the fir, spruce, pine, like when you hear pine honey or oak honey, fir honey, spruce honey, these are all coming from those trees, but either they are secretion of the trees or they are the excretion of the aphids or other insects. Excretion means feces. So the aphids, they feed on the sap of the tree. So with their long tongues, they go into the sap of the tree. They extract the high glucose liquid, the sap, and then because it's too much, they cannot digest all of it, and they excrete it. So this excretion is white, sugary stuff. Honeybees go there, collect it, and convert into honey. So now when you eat honey, you are eating bee vomit, and you are eating aphids excretion. Alhamdulillah. Sorry? Honey? No, you cannot say that. I mean, honeydew honey, they are mostly labeled, and it is harder to find. Okay, so these are, probably you may have heard about the wildflower honey or clover honey, or you may see avocado honey if you go to HEB or other places, but there are more than like 90 different honeys has been identified. This number can even go more, but these are the honey types in the world. So some of the honeys are honeydew honey, the ones with our darker color, like pine honey, plum honey, peach honey, oak honey, or poplar honey. Some of them are medical grade honey, like those green ones, Beringa, Bashkir, Gelam, Jarrah, Chestnut, or Maharishi, Manuka. This is the most famous one. Tualang honey, and Sidr honey from Yemen. And I'll show some of the images from those. There is one artificial honey which is called Mele Bio. Again, it is the mixture of syrups, but they also add some nectar into this one, and they market it as artificial honey, which I don't trust so much. But other thing is there are some toxic honeys, which means that honey can have side effects on you. Honey can even kill you. I will show you a video of an animal so that you will see that what this toxic honey, which is called med honey, can do to you. So we should be careful about if the honey source is either mountain laurel. I know we have Texas mountain laurel here, but it's not the same thing. Tutu honey or med honey or rhododendron honey. These are the ones that are, strong ones. Okay, so now let's go into the honey as a medicine. So this is what, yes, sir. It is the most marketed, most promoted, most researched honey. Not the quality is so much better. It has been studied for more than 30 years. So since 1990s, Manuka honey has been first studied by Professor Peter Mullen from New Zealand. So he identified the Manuka honey has strong antimicrobial properties. And since then, the whole country of New Zealand invested on the Manuka honey to promote it to the world. So Manuka honey is about 10 to 12 times more expensive than the local honey. But I will show you some other honeys that are the same properties or even more, depending on our time. So how many of you use honey as a medicine in your daily life? Okay, give me some examples. Yes, sir. Allergies, okay. For what? For cough, good. Anything else? Yes, sister. Eczema, okay, skin diseases. Wound healing, great. Immune system, okay. So there are different uses of honey. Alhamdulillah, we are using in our daily life, and not so many people know about this, but honey has several different diseases that honey can be used for treatment. So now I will show you, like, let's remember this legendary honey first. So that I tell you that, like, there are different honeys, but before we go, I'll just want to show you what happened to this animal, the bear. What happened to this bear, you think? She ate honey. And which honey? Mad honey, yes. So this bear is high, seriously high, psychedelic. And this is happening because of granatoxin 2. If you are familiar with the biochemistry, so granatoxin 2 is found in this rhododendron plant. It is a purple plant. This is called kumar tree in Turkey. And it's also found in Himalayas. So this rhododendron ponticum, this species only, it has granatoxin 2 in it. And granatoxin, what it does is it expands the aorta. So for this reason, the blood pressure goes down, and the blood pressure goes down, you know, your body, like your brain doesn't get enough blood, and it will cause convulsions, and then this less of oxygen will make you high. But if you go too high, you may not come back. So that's the other thing. If this mad honey is consumed too much, which means that about like maybe up to 10 tablespoons or even more, it will cause serious side effects. You may end up in the ER, and you have to vomit as soon as possible. If not, then it may end up like, you know, your heart may stop eventually because of it cannot push up, it cannot keep up with that one. So, from this perspective, do you think you can use honey as a bioweapon? Okay, bioweapon, don't say that word. But yes, they used it about 2,000 years ago. Oops. So these are the Roman soldiers. So the Persian and Romans, they fought each other. It is 67 BC. The emperor of Roma, Pompey, the great Pompey, and then the other one was the king of the poison, Mithridates. So they were in a fight, it's most of the time, and Mithridates is known as the poison of the kings. Sorry, kings of the poison. So he knows about the poisons very well, and he knows about the mad honey. So when they were retrieving, and the Romans were following them, they agreed with the villagers on the northeastern part of Turkey, like Trabzon, Rize, that area. So when they were retrieving, they agreed with the villagers, and the villagers put honey pots on the road. But these honey pots, they have mad honey in them. So the Roman soldiers, when they come to the village, when they're passing through, they said, "Oh, look at this, the villagers love us. They're welcoming us with honey." And they indulged into the honey. They ate the mad honey as much as they could. And then this is what happened to them. So more than 1,000 Roman soldiers were killed without any loss of other soldiers, because they cannot even move their... Look at the bear, what happened? Do you think is it easy to kill that bear? It's but easy to kill those Roman soldiers as well. So for this reason, honey is the first bioweapon used in the history, and then also it has been like registered one, and also it has been like sweetest bioweapon. So again, but on the other hand, can you use this honey as a medicine? How? High blood pressure, yes. The local people in northeastern Turkey or in the Himalayas, so they use, in the Nepal, they use this mad honey as a blood pressure regulator. So if you have high blood pressure, you can use small amounts. But again, that is the dosage that will save you or kill you. So be careful. Not medical advice, just yes.
You are saying that the flower is affecting the ingredient of the honey.
Yes, when the bees collected, this granatoxin doesn't do anything to the bees because they don't have aorta or other heart as we had. So it doesn't harm the bees, but when it is put into the honey and the people consume it, then it causes bradycardia, like expansion of the aorta.
This is for mouth
Med honey.
What about the others that come from,
Like the tutu honey or mountain laurel honey, yes, they have the very similar effects.
that come from different flowers? Have the same effect?
No, only this flower or the same family flowers. Like there are like certain family flowers which have granulotoxin 2 in them. So that's the active ingredient which causes this. Okay. So this is the list of diseases that honey or other honeybee products may treat. Some of them has clinical evidence, some of them have animal studies, some of them has historical evidence. So this, I collected this from healthywithhoney.com. So if you're interested to read about how honey can treat the respiratory disease or alcoholism, or how honey can help with the wound care, or for Parkinson's disease or eye conditions, you may visit that website and they have some references for those. Yes? Yes, I will cover that one very soon, if you don't mind. Yes. I wish I had a clicker, but I'll go with this. So, according to the evidence-based studies, so honey has these 7 different properties. So number 1, honey is a wound healing agent. So honey can heal the wounds, and I will show you some images from clinical trials. And honey is antimicrobial, which is that honey doesn't allow the bacteria or other microbes to grow inside it or wherever it is. Honey is antioxidant, so which means that it helps our cells to have longer life, and then it prevents the oxidative stress. Normally, oxidative stress causes cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, obesity, or even neurological diseases. And then honey is anti-inflammatory, so it prevents the inflammation in the area. Honey is anti-diabetic. Again, I'll show you the image why. And then honey is anti-tumor, so it prevents the regrowth of the cancer cells. And it also helps alleviate the symptoms of the chemotherapy. And then honey is gastroprotective. Sorry. So before I move on, if you are interested in reading books about how honey can be used as a medicine, unfortunately there are very limited number of the books. In the overall Amazon or other places, there are only 2 books published about how honey can use for health benefits. So number 1, this is my textbook in the classroom, 2 Million Blossoms, Discovering the Medicinal Benefits of Honey. So if you're interested in reaching out the references or so, this is the best book that you may access. And it is pretty affordable, about $20 or so. And the Honey Revolution is the one written by a medical doctor, Ron Fessenden. So he wrote about how much honey we need to use daily and for which diseases we should be using honey. And the last one is just published this year, the World Atlas of Honey. So it gives you information about which honeys are produced in which part of the world and how the honey is being, processed in those cases and how to identify them. So for gastrointestinal diseases, probably you heard about IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. So it may cause diarrhea, it may cause constipation, colitis, or sometimes it can cause like even ulcer in the stomach, and it causes also imbalance in the microflora inside the body. So here I would like to introduce you to the hadith that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mentioned. So one of the Sahaba comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says that my brother has an abdominal pain. And Rasulullah ﷺ told him, go and let him drink honey. So honey sherbet, honey drink. And then he comes next day again, he said, he still has abdominal pain. And then let him drink honey. Rasulullah ﷺ answers. And the third day again he comes, and Rasulullah says again, let him drink honey. And after that, he says, the Prophet said, I have done it, Allah has said the truth, but your brother's abdomen has told a lie. Let him drink honey again. And he made him drink honey and he was cured. So this is how the hadith is narrated. So from here, probably we have some internal medicine doctors here or gastrointestinal doctors. So the abdominal pain can cause because of irritable bowel syndrome, diarrhea, constipation, colitis, ulcer. We don't know the exact reason. But there are 2 things here. One of them is the dosage. Because you cannot treat some of the disease with one drink. So with one honey drink, you need to do it more than once. So that's why it was gone for 3 days. So 3 dosage of the honey or honey drink. The other one is the honey is diluted in water because it says let him drink honey. It doesn't say let him eat honey. So drink means that you need to dilute the honey in water. But there is a significant difference if you dilute the honey in warm water versus cold water. Because when you dilute the honey in cold water, it is used for diarrhea. When you dilute the honey for warm water, it is used for constipation. If you mix them up, it's not good. Because one of them you cannot hold it, the other one you cannot let it go. So you should be careful about the temperature. Again, warm temperature, warm honey drink for constipation, cold honey drink for diarrhea. So the other reason is that maybe the Sahaba has used the wrong temperature and it kind of made it worse. So again, honey can be used for different diseases, and Helicobacter pylori, which is the bacteria that causes ulcer, it's an anaerobic bacteria, which means that it grows in the area where there is not oxygen available. And it grows in the acid of our stomach. If you have ulcer, you should be using honey into the empty stomach before anything else in the morning. So you should be eating honey only, so it will survive in the acid because honey itself is acidic. It will be able to kill the Helicobacter pylori and treat the ulcer, inshallah. And honey for diabetes. So, you know, in our life, that would be nice. Thank you. So, as you know, diabetic patients, they need to stay away from high glycemic index food, and they need to stay with low glycemic index food. So whenever your dietitian is recommending you to what to eat, if you have diabetes, they will tell you can eat this, this, and this, like low glycemic index sugar, but not high glycemic index one. So most of the honeys, not all of them, but most of the honeys are falling into the low glycemic index area. So for this reason, most of the honeys do not spike your blood glucose level. Look at this image here, the blue line is the glucose. So when you give the glucose directly to the blood, it is from human studies. This is the glycemic index of Manuka honey in 2013. So when you give the glucose directly, the blood glucose goes all the way up to 8.5 millimolar. But when you give other honeys, so that all these others are Manuka honeys, and it never goes more than like 7 to 7.5. And then they go the same time, which means that the honeys are, again, this says Manuka honey, but again, most of the honeys are low glycemic index, and it will not spike your blood glucose level. So for this reason, diabetic patients can use low glycemic index honey. And which are them on low glycemic index? We need to research those. I mean, probably not the one in the grocery store, but some local honeys, they have low glycemic index. So for this reason, diabetic patients can consume honey, which is low glycemic index. Next, please. So other thing is that honey is how much honey we should use. I mean, because honey itself, it has all the components inside it, like the carbohydrates and also some other chemicals. So some people say that you can survive only by eating honey for several days because it has the energy source for our body. It has no fiber, no fat, and no protein, but it has 64 calories, which is about 17 grams of carbs. Cholesterol-free, gluten-free, sodium-free, fat-free. So when used in moderation, honey can be a healthy alternative to the sugars. So again, just by eating honey, you will have a pretty healthy diet. And again, it will not spike your blood glucose level. It goes slowly into the bloodstream because of the glucose and fructose together served. So, and then it will be a healthy choice. But how much honey should you use per day? Like 1 tablespoon, 1 teaspoon, 1 cup. 1 tablespoon, good. 3 tablespoons. Okay. I mean normal people. Okay, according to the book that I mentioned, The Honey Revolution, the medical doctor Ron Fessenden, he recommends to use 2 tablespoons of honey per day, and it should be consumed before going to the bed. Normally, we are always recommended that don't eat anything before going to bed. It will cause fat. But again, honey doesn't have fat in it. And the other thing is honey will be stored as glycogen into the liver, and our brain doesn't sleep at night. You know, it is refiling all the memories and everything. So brain needs the glucose for functionality. So brain will extract the glucose from the glycogen sources in the liver, which is produced by the honey or which is provided by the honey. So for this reason, eating honey before going to bed and up to 2 tablespoons per day, so it will be helpful for a better sleep, a better memory, and more functional brain. And also there are some other activities with those. So I recommend you to read that book, like how it will say. No, just like consuming. But again, I don't know if this is the perfect way, because Rasulullah says in one of the hadiths, so anyone who consumes honey 3 times a month, like eats the whole honey in the month, so they will be prevented from major illnesses. So for preventive medicine, it should be consumed at least 3 times in a month. I don't know, it is beginning, middle, or end, but it says 3 times in a month. So we should be using honey, preferably almost every day. So inshallah, we can be prevented from diseases. And also there are some studies, the beekeepers, this has happened during the COVID time, by the way. So when the COVID hit, remember it was 2020, winter. So the beekeepers who consumed the fall honey in the fall of 2019, they got less COVID infection when compared to other ones. This was a study done in China. So I wasn't able to access the paper, but this is where I read in a reliable magazine or kind of journal. So, and again, there are so much evidence that the beekeepers, they live a little bit longer than the same age group of the people. So again, consuming honey can extend our life expectancy as well. Next, please. So we said honey is antibacterial, which means that because of the high sugar content, 76% sugar, bacteria cannot survive in this high sugar content. The other one is the acidity, because most of the honeys are acidic, like between pH 3.6 to 5.6. So this acidity doesn't allow the bacteria to grow, like Enterococcus, Salmonella, E. coli. So these are disease-causing pathogens, and they don't like to be in the acidic environment. They cannot survive in that areas. So they prefer base 6.5 to 8.5. So, but for this reason, honey doesn't allow them to grow. The other one is organic antibacterial compounds. Remember, the honeybees are collecting those small molecules from the plants. So these are antibacterial agents for the honey, for the honeybee, and for humans as well. So these phenolics, flavonoids, tannins, or other chemicals, they are antibacterial compounds that are found inside the honey. But for this reason, not every honey is created equal. So every honey has its own potential, every honey has its own property. And the last one is hydrogen peroxide. Remember, there is an enzyme called glucose oxidase inside the honey. So it will convert the glucose into gluconic acid and hydrogen peroxide. So do you use hydrogen peroxide in your daily life? Like, how do you use hydrogen peroxide? For gargling? For the wounds, right? So normally, if you put the 3% hydrogen peroxide into the wound, you will see bubbles there, because it will gonna kill the bacteria, but also it kills our own cells, because it is 3%. But when the honey is diluted, when the honey is put onto the wound, it will produce a continuous 0.3%, so 10 times less. And 10 times less peroxide it will kill the bacteria, but it will not harm the human cells. So it is very, very selective percentage. But if you put yourself 0.3%, it won't help that much, because you need to keep providing it. But honey, as long as there is water available from the body, so it will be able to produce peroxide, and then it will kill the bacteria in the area. Next, please. Honey is antioxidant, so which means that antioxidants are the ones, or free radicals are the ones that causes disease in us, like cardiovascular diseases, neurological diseases, or diabetes. So these are all resourcing from the free radicals or oxidative stress in our body. So those chemicals inside the honey, they serve as antioxidants, and they will scavenge these free radicals, and by this way, they can prevent the senescence or aging of the cell. Next, please. So this is the most important part, the honey for wound healing. So as you know, when you have a wound, when you have a scratch on your arm or leg or whatever, so the first thing happens is bleeding. So when the bleeding happens, like let's say you have a paper cut, so it will bleed there, and then after that, it will start some inflammation. You see those redness in the area after the cut, so this is inflammation. So after the bleeding is done. And inflammation is an alarm inside the body. It is a kind of fire alarm, because there is the heat in that area is increased, so it will invite all the white blood cells, like the immune cells. So by this way, it can prevent the growth of bacteria in the area. But if inflammation goes too long, this is the point that the wounds do not heal. Sometimes wound healing can take up to days, weeks, months, or even years. So there are patients who has unhealing wounds for about 3 years. And I will show some images, and unhealing wound for 2 years. So these wounds are unhealing or non-healing because of the long term of inflammation and infection. And if this is not stopped, then you need to amputate the organ. especially in the diabetic patients. And the next stage is proliferative, which is the epithelial cells and fibroblasts, they just fill the area. And finally, we have the remodeling in the last one. You can go next. So honey can help all these three stages, inflammation, proliferation, and remodeling. So when you use honey, especially in the C-section patients, so when the C-section area is covered with honey, it doesn't leave any scar tissue on the back. And it helps the healing without any inflammation, and it heals without any infection. So it regulates the inflammation and inhibits the infection there. Next, please. So now, there are some images which you may not feel comfortable, especially for the kids. If they are sensitive, please don't let them look. Next, please.
You want to wait?
Yes.
You want to wait for 1 second?
No, I think they are good, right? Everybody's okay? Coming, come. Yes. So this is a big wound healing by using honey. So this is how we apply the honey into the large wounds. As you see from number 3, the wound is so large, the fist of the nurse can fit in it. So it is as large as a fist can fit. And this wound is not a wound on the surface, it is a tunnel wound, which means that there are several linkages, there are several ways inside the wound, so it is infected. About last week or 2 weeks ago, I heard from a medical doctor in South Africa, and she said she was able to put 5 meters of cotton, the gauze, 5 meters of gauze into one wound. Can you imagine that? 5 meters of gauze into one wound. So some wounds can be that deep. So this one is like pretty deep wound, so it is cleaned with 10% honey solution in saline. And after the cleaning of the wound with 10% honey in saline, then as you see in number 7, you just pour the honey into the area because it's a large wound, and then you cover it with the dressing. So this dressing is, I think, changed every 2 or 3 days depending on the size of the wound and how much honey is being absorbed by the wound. Next, please. So this is this patient, hemiparalytic bed sore. So which means that the patient has probably Alzheimer's or so she cannot move. And this patient has been transferred to the wound clinic. This study is done in Malaysia, in the Kuala Lumpur. So you see on the top one, the top left corner, the patient has a very infected wound. And normally, a medical doctor or an orthopedic doctor will decide that you have to amputate the whole leg. What happens if you don't amputate? Why? Infection will cause what? Will sepsis. So the blood will get the infection, and when your blood gets infected, which is called sepsis, it may cause multiple organ failure and it will kill the person. So for this reason, to save the body, they amputate the organ. So now, again, this patient was recommended for amputation, and they said, okay, we have honey, do you want to try it? And she said, yes, as a last resort, I would like to try honey. So after 1 week, you can see on the top right corner, the patient has no more pus, no more infection, no more malodor, and we have fresh tissue coming up, and the bacteria is gone, and human, like regular cells are coming up. And week 3, the letter C here, it is almost closed. The epithelial tissue is closing right now. Remodeling happens, and that is week 4. So this patient was discharged from the wound clinic in 7 weeks. After 7 weeks, this wound was completely closed. So normally, they were going to amputate the leg. Next, please. This is a patient which I mentioned about a non-healing wound for 2 years. This is a 26-year-old diabetic male patient. So look at the wound. It is on this area, like on the groin area. So this diabetic patient, he has a small wound under his feet. And because of neuropathy, he didn't feel that. And then that got infected. Then they amputated the foot from the ankle. And then again it's got infected around the leg area, and it becomes very serious, then amputated from the knee. Again, got infected around the thigh area, they amputated from the hip. So there's no more amputation. There's no more you can save the body. So this guy has been treated for 2 years with all conventional medicine, different kind of wound healing agents, antibacterials. But after 2 years, so he decided that he was involved into the honey clinical trial. So you see there's lots of infection and pus and yellowness in that area. So 1 week later, you see the infection is gone, the fresh tissue is coming up, and the week 3, the wound is almost cleared up, and week 4, there was a skin graft from the other leg because it was such a big wound. so they cannot, it will not heal by itself. They did a skin graft, and the patient was discharged. So this is in 4 weeks, the patient is saved, and this is a diabetic patient. So the patient is saved from death. Next, please. This is another patient. So he has infection on his left arm. He was a street fighter or cage fighter. He got a sword slice, and it was infected. So again, if you look at the top left corner, medical doctors will tell that we need to amputate this because it is heavily infected and it is not responding to the conventional antibiotics. So 1 week later, you see no more infection, the fresh tissues up, regenerative tissues are coming up. So that is week 3. Look at how small the wound is. And this is just by honey from Malaysia, which is the Galam honey that they have used. And then after that, we don't have the fourth picture. You know why? The patient ran away to the streets because he was a fighter. Next, please. So, and this is another patient, diabetic neuropathic ulcer, so which means that the patient cannot feel the wound under the feet. You can see the bone is visible under the toe. And it is such a deep wound, and just 3 times of honey application, the wound is completely healed and closed. Again, the only option for this foot was amputation. But just by using honey, alhamdulillah, the patient was able to survive, and then it is saved from the amputation. So the Cochrane collaboration is a very reliable, very prestigious journal among the medical doctors and the pharmacists as well, because it is the one that is collecting different, clinical trials. And in 2016, they collected the clinical trials using the honey about 8 years ago, and they found out, or they declared that honey doesn't damage to the human cells, but it is not better than the other medications. Yes, they cannot openly say honey is better than the others, but at least they could not deny honey is a wound healer. So, and they collected I think more than 40 different clinical trials in the world. But again, this is back in 2016. Right now, honey is being used in wound clinics and burn clinics all around the world. And even in the US, we have some honey companies in there. Next, please. So, which honey to be used then? Okay, for consumption, we said dark color honey and then so. But what about medical grade honey? How to identify that? So this is our honey pathway. I'm the project director for this one, and funded by USDA. So we are identifying the medical grade US honeys. Next, please. So for medical honey, there are several criteria. So not every honey is medical grade honey. It needs to be gamma sterilized to avoid the harmful microorganisms like the spores. It needs to be safe for clinical implementation. Storage must be proper. But the most important part is they must possess proven biological activity, like antioxidant, antimicrobial activity. So if they don't have enough activity, they are not considered as medical grade honey. And we are identifying them. Next, please. And these are some different violation and adulteration in the honey market. And I know our time is getting short, so we can move forward. And these are some honey products in the market which are available for use. And as you see, most of them has FDA clearance, which means that the US Food and Drug Administration, they approved the use of honey in the medical devices, so as a wound management device. And also it has been cleared in Europe, CE is in the Europe, and these are different brands. And I currently work with El Mezitran. That's the company that we are working on a clinical trial in San Antonio. So inshallah, we're gonna apply this honey into the homeless people in the Corazon Clinic to treat their wounds. That's one of our projects going on right now. Next, please. So is the Manuka honey the only one in the world in terms of medical grade honey? To be honest, Manuka honey, as you ask, is the most studied, most marketed, and most promoted honey in the world. But there are some other honeys. Do you know any other honeys other than Manuka? I mean, we have buckwheat honey, but what other honeys can be good candidates for medical grade honey? Think about your own home countries. Neem honey, okay. You may recall the table. Round Rock honey, no, it's from Austin. And that honey is blended with some other honeys from time to time. Syrian honey, okay. Sorry. Eucalyptus honey, yes. Eucalyptus is one of those. Okay, so buckwheat honey from United States. How many of you tasted buckwheat honey? It's available in this area. So look at the color of the honey. It doesn't look like honey, right? It looks like molasses. It doesn't taste like honey either. It doesn't smell like honey either, because it's a medicine. Because buckwheat honey has one of the highest antioxidant honeys in the whole United States or in the world as well. So we analyzed more than 450 samples since 2017, and I found out buckwheat honey is always in top 10 in terms of antioxidant activities. So, and buckwheat honey is available in Texas. Also, it's mostly available in the northern border, like US-Canada border in Michigan and other areas. They have lots of buckwheat honey. And it has been studied by the people not in the US, but in UK, and they found out buckwheat honey is highly antioxidant. Next, please. So, for example, from Chile, from South America, they have the ulmo honey, which is the Patagonia's elixir for health and longevity. And we have chestnut honey from Turkey. Again, this is one of the most commonly applied medical honey used in Turkey. Next, please. We have the tuolang honey. Look at the color of the honey. Does it look like honey? No, but this is the honey that is used in that clinical trial. Those images that I showed, they use this tuolang honey for the treatment of them. So as you see, most of the times, the darker the color of honey, the higher medical potential. The other one is from the cedar honey from Yemen, Saudi Arabia, or Pakistan. So this is the cedar tree that is, providing the nectar for the cedar honey. Next, please. Another important one that I discovered in this area, which is in San Antonio Hill Country area, like Austin, San Antonio Hill Country area, they have the oak honey, and it's also available in Balkans, in Europe. So oak honey is a honeydew honey. So the plants, as you see, the bees are collecting honeydew on the leaves. So on the oak leaves, they don't have, oaks don't have flowers. So they collect these secretions, and then they will make honey out of those. So oak honey is in the Balkans area, but it's also available in the, in the hill country area. And again, as you see, the color is black. The color of, this is a glass. It's a clear glass. So you can see the color of the honey. Another one is Jarrah honey in Australia. So this is a kind of competitor for Manuka honey. And this is the second most studied honey probably in that area. So they have a lot of studies about Jarrah honey. Next, please. Another very important candidate from United States is spotted lanternfly honey. Lanternflies are bugs. They're insects. So they make, they make light. Like, when you go see outside them, so they will flash. So this spotted lanternfly is considered as an invasive species, which means that it doesn't belong to the United States. And those spotted lanternfly, you see that on the red polka dots, the black polka dots on the red. So it is mostly found in northeastern United States. So right now we have more than 20 samples of spotted lanternfly honey or SLF honey, and they are all, most of them are above Manuka honey. They have more antimicrobial than the Manuka and more antioxidant than the Manuka honey. So it is one of the strongest candidates in the US to be considered as medical grade honey. The other one is mad honey. Yes, we said mad honey may kill, but it's also used as a medication to regulate the blood pressure. And mad honey is a very light, much lighter color. It looks like the honey that we eat normally. So that's why it is easy to confuse mad honey with other honeys. So that if you travel to northeastern Turkey, make sure you ask that you don't consume mad honey. Yes, next please. So how do I identify these medical grade honey? Click. So we measure the antimicrobial activity, antioxidant activity, and physical chemical characteristics. So these three major points or measurements are important to identify if that honey is medical grade or not. Remember, not every honey is created equal. We need to measure them in the lab and in the research settings to identify if they're medical grade. So right now, as of today, we analyzed more than 450 samples, and inshallah, we'll be collecting more honey samples this summer from the local Texas area. If you have honeybees, or if you want if a beekeeper in the area want to taste their honey, you can send this to us. I will share my email at the end. Next, please. So how do I identify this? What time we need to finish? Keep going? Alhamdulillah. Okay, we'll keep going. So antimicrobial, we need to use some method to find out how honey can kill the bacteria. So these are different methods that they can use, like agar well diffusion, peroxide activity, cell proliferation viability, XTT, disc diffusion. So these are different methods that you can identify if a product is antimicrobial. Next, please. So we use the well diffusion assay. So you see, this is the golden staph. So this is the bacteria that causes staph infection, and as well as this is one of the resistant bacteria, which means that antibiotics cannot kill this bacteria. So what happens is that we opened up the petri dish. So we put the bacteria, like those yellowish pussy thing is the bacteria that's grown, and we opened up wells and we put honey into them. So next day, 18 hours later, we measured this clear zone. So those clear zones means bacteria cannot survive in that area. So this is the zone of inhibition. So this is the area where bacteria cannot grow. So as you see, different honeys have different zone of inhibition, which means that they have different antimicrobial potential or antimicrobial activity. So that's why I keep telling not every honey is created equal. We need to measure it. Next, please. So anything above 16, it is the cutoff value. And when we analyze the samples from San Antonio area, so we found 89 of the 120 samples, which is 74% of the honey samples that we collected from Texas, San Antonio area. 74% of them, they have high antimicrobial activity, which is a great potential. I don't have the images for the store honeys, but we also did a research about 40 store honey versus 40 local beekeeper honey, and we found that local beekeeper honeys are 5 times more antimicrobial compared to the store honeys. So store honey is about like 15%, like 14 to 15% of antimicrobial activity. Local honeys have 74% of activity. So about 5 times more antimicrobial when you buy from local beekeepers. That's why you should find a local beekeeper in the area, and then you can buy the honey from them. How are you gonna find them? You need to go to Real Texas Honey. It's not available there, but realtexashoney.org or .com, or just Google Real Texas Honey, and you find that in your local area, you'll find some local beekeepers. And again, if you can, you need to ask them to get comb honey if possible. If not, you can still get the strained honey. Next, please. And this is about antioxidant activity, anything above 100 gallic acid equivalent. And then we found out 36% of the honeys, we analyzed about 120 of them. So we found out 36% of them has high antioxidant. As you see, the Texas honeys are both high antimicrobial and high antioxidant. So they are very strong candidates to become medical grade honey. Next, please. And these are some of the donors. Like I only show the top 20. So BAL means, like you see the yellow is a BAL. BAL means bioactivity level. So by considering antimicrobial activity, antioxidant activity, and physical chemical characteristics, I came up with a formula to calculate bioactivity level. And this bioactivity level tells us how high the medical potential of the honey in those cases. So these honeys, like from Victoria Lobok or Lily Cute or David Hunter, you can see their names. And again, these are beekeepers in Texas. And then they have a very high bioactivity level. So these are the honeys that are the most potential medical grade honeys in Texas. Next, please. So just again summarize, not all honeys are created equal. The Texas honeys, they have high antimicrobial potential, 74%, and more than 30% they have high antioxidant. And I don't have the results here, but they can outcompete with the Manuka honey, because not every Manuka honey is the same either, by the way. So you ask about why Manuka honey is very expensive. So if something is expensive, what the people do, what the producers do or what the sellers do? They're gonna cheat it, right? So how much, like in terms of the ranking, what is the rank of honey to be adulterated in the world? To make food fraud? It's number 1 or 2. In the whole world, honey is one of the most adulterated food product in the world. Others are olive oil and milk. So honey is being easily blended with sugars or with other things. That's why we need to be very careful when we are consuming honey. Again, I do not recommend, okay, maybe I'm not in that position, but I recommend to buy local beekeeper honey. I personally don't buy grocery store honeys anymore, like those teddy bear honeys from major grocery stores. I don't buy them anymore. But sorry? They are the most common ones, but again, most of the honeys are like only 20% of the honeys sold in the US are produced in the US. 80% are imported. So they're imported from different countries. And the price of US produced honey is about $3 per pound in the wholesale. The price of imported honey is 40 cents per pound. Do you see the number difference? Like 40 cents, $3. What would you do if you have a honey packer? Just mix them and sell the US honey. Because if you get 80% of imported honey, 20% US honey, it is still considered as US honey. But it is imported honey. And even some people say local honey, and they sell it like that. So you should be very careful about when you are buying local honey. That's why I keep telling, find a local beekeeper. Or you become a beekeeper yourself on your backyard. The Texas state allows you to raise even most of the cities, they allow you to have bees in your backyard. So, and there are very easy ways to do those. Like you can do top bar beekeeping. I'll be happy to help if you are interested in those. But again, it is the best way to produce your own bees or to produce on your hives. Next, please. Okay, I think this was the last slide. So I'd like to kindly ask if you can fill out the survey. This is about the honey pathway. So we're also collecting some, feedbacks from the audience. So if you can kindly fill out the survey for this presentation, I'd really appreciate it. I'll just keep it here for a minute. So if you need time. But meanwhile, I can get questions. Yes.
Why there is a warning always not to give it to children?
To the infants.
Infants or
Yes.
years and
Okay, so that's a very good question. He's asking why there is always a sign. And by the way, it is removed this year. FDA decided to remove that label. So you don't need to put the label, do not feed the infants less than 1 year old with honey. That label is not required anymore. And I will tell you why. Because honey, remember there is no bacteria that can live inside the honey, but there are some spores that can survive inside the honey. So one of them is the Clostridium botulinum, which causes food poisoning. So you know the Botox, like botulinum? So this one is when some of the kids were, brought to the emergencies because of some food poisoning or infant botulism, so they found out those kids were fed with honey. But again, they were never found honey in their stomach or in their stools, and also they could not find, anyway, I'll cut it short, but the main reason is those botulinum spores, they can survive and they can revive in the guts of the babies. That's why it is not recommended to feed them. But I have 2 kids, alhamdulillah. So the youngest one, I fed him when he was only 2 weeks old. I started feeding with honey. If you trust your honey source, and if you know that it is not mixed with other things, so you can, I personally fed, and I know so many other people feed their babies. So, because honey doesn't allow other spores or things to grow inside it. And again, that's one of the reasons that they removed the requirement to write it anymore. So, again, based on my personal research experience, I collected so many papers about this, but I do not believe that honey causes infant botulism. They did not provide enough evidence. They only provided cultural evidence. They say Pakistani family who usually feeds their babies with honey, so they brought their baby for food poisoning, which may be caused because of Clostridium botulinum. But again, they did fecal culture, from the feces, they couldn't find it. And they only said there was honey available, but they fed the honey about 5 days ago. So if the honey would cause disease, it should be just the next day or so, not 5 days ago. Again, I can discuss about this, but I don't believe the infants should not be fed with honey. Yes?
I know you said now it's not.
Yes.
Sometimes it crystallizes. Does that mean it's fake?
Very good question, yes. How many of you believe crystal honey is spoiled or fake? Crystallized honey, the honey crystals, is that honey bad? Why not? Real honey will crystallize. Okay, I will tell you the mechanism of crystallization. Remember, there is glucose inside the honey, and there are pollens coming from the plants. So pollen is the main molecule that the glucose will bind and make a crystal. So pollen is here, one glucose, another glucose, another glucose. It will make one crystal, one crystal, one crystal. When you watch the honey crystallization, you're gonna see so many white specks. And then they will combine and make a full crystal. This is totally natural. This shows that your honey does have pollen in it, which is natural. And your honey has glucose in it, which is also part of the honey. So crystal honey is not spoiled honey. What you can do is you can just put it into warm water overnight, and then, or alternatively, I don't recommend very much, but you can leave the honey inside your car, like during the daytime in Texas heat, and you'll see that all the crystals are gone by next day. But sometimes the heat inside the car can go more than 150, which is not good for the enzymes. So the maximum temperature you can apply to honey, and nobody asked, but I will tell, the maximum temperature you should dissolve your honey is 125 Fahrenheit, which is 55 degrees Celsius. If anything more than 125, honey's enzymes will get denatured completely, irreversibly. So how do you measure that? Use your pinky finger. If your pinky finger can resist the temperature, honey can resist as well. Or if it doesn't burn your mouth, it will not kill the honey either. I'm sorry. Any other questions? Yes?
You mentioned earlier in the khutbah about
Biomimicry is like when we analyze the honeys or like honeybees, we can get examples from those. That's what I mentioned in the beginning as well.
Does that play a part in some of the commercialized honey?
No, that's not the mimicry. This is like fake honey, or they make, chemical honey, or like they just make the glucose syrup and the fructose syrup, and they make others. Yes, Sheikh. Yeah, actually we just covered it, but honey doesn't have a shelf life. Honey doesn't expire. So once you buy the honey, oh, thank you very much. So once you buy the honey, it will remain like for, so many years. Even 3,000-year-old honey is still edible because no bacteria can survive inside the honey. No. If you feed when you feed the bees with sugar, they will still convert it into honey, like glucose and fructose. It doesn't remain like sugar anymore. Some of the honeys, they will crystallize inside the comb. I don't know if you ever saw that, but some honeys, they crystallize inside the comb, and when you get it, it is still crystal. But some honeys, like oak honey or pine honey, which doesn't have so much glucose in them, or not so much pollen in them naturally, they don't crystallize. And do you know why the grocery store honeys, like Walmart, H-E-B, whatever other ones, why don't they crystallize? They never crystallize. What is the trick? No. There is no pollen in them. They heat the honey, because honey is very viscous, you need to heat it to flow. They heat the honey, they apply diatomous earth, which will collect all the pollens, and they push it, apply pressure to go to the filter. Pollen will stay, everything else will pass. When there is no pollen, no crystallization. It's very clear. Yes? Yes, we covered a little bit. Honey, low glycemic index honey are good for diabetic patients. But you need to find it is low glycemic index, because not all the honeys are low glycemic index, which means that the less sweet honeys, like the more acidic honeys or more darker honeys, they have lower glycemic index. The honeys that you buy from the grocery store, or the water white or white honeys, like kind of lighter colors, they are mostly higher glycemic index. So they are not recommended, but low glycemic index are okay for the diabetic patients. I'm sorry, I think it's also time for the Isha.
Experience with the round honey, because it does crystallize.
I can tell about, but can you go next, please? I'd like to thank the people. So I'd like to thank the honey pathway that we established, the USDA, the honeybee samples donors, the Texas Beekeeper Association. So inshallah, the Texas Beekeeper Convention in November will be in Austin. So you are welcome to join the convention in November. And alhamdulillah, we were able to secure a grant, 2.8 million from USDA to study this. Next, please. And these are my honey students. Next again. So these are my students that we did all the research together, alhamdulillah. And next. I also would like to thank Raindrop Foundation for inviting me to Austin before, and that's how we were invited to ICBC as well. So, and this is my email address, honeypetway@utsa.edu, or you can also find my name. If you have any questions, feel free to contact. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, Dr. Ferhat. What a wonderful halakha on this very important subject. I'm sure we are all have a lot of questions. So in future, or community people can reach you through.
Yes, they can reach me
Yeah,
from the
inshallah.
email or from my name, inshallah.
Inshallah.
And if you are interested in any of these, I'll
On
be
behalf
happy.
of ICBC, we have a little.
Oh, thank you so much. You don't need to.
That's okay. We appreciate the time, inshallah. Again, we'll see you once a year. Well, this is also for your family.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Again, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be part of the, of this talk. Inshallah, it is helpful at least a little bit for you guys, so you can consume more honey and more local honey.